Driver, start your engine!
Yeah, I mean, Logano didn't get hit by nobody. He just flat out drove through me. So he's got another one coming. I owe him a few. I mean, last year's show I felt like was relatively clean and good racing, some bumping, some banging, but we could run long stretches of green flag action. Where today was, I would call it a disaster with just the disrespect from everybody of just driving through each other and not, just letting everything kind of work its way out. But I mean, it's a quarter mile. It's tight quarters racing. Actually, this is probably how it should have gone last year. So we got spoiled with a good show the first year. So maybe this was just normal.
Hey, race fans, welcome to the Whoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to the Draft in the Circus program produced by Sinister One Productions. Gosh, guys, we are live tonight for the first time in a long time. We used to do this show live back in 2012 or so, but joining me in the studio, Levi, Luis Torres, Richard Uden. Fellas, what's up?
What's up?
How's it going?
Yo.
All right. So, man, great to see y'all. And, guys, we are live. So if you want to put a comment on the Facebook page, we will try to respond to as many as we can. But, we're here for you. We'll be here for the next hour talking everything racing. And so the top of the show there, you saw a little clip from Kyle Busch giving us his thoughts about the clash at the Coliseum. He felt like we were a little spoiled because it was a nice clean show last year, and this year, not quite so much. But Louise, you spent your weekend out there in Los Angeles at the clash. I saw some of your photographs you took and read some of your things you wrote. So, Louise, give us a little rundown on how this year's clash was. It looked like it was a little less attended than last year's sellout crowd, but still not horrible.
That'd be up for honest debate about the crowd is concerned. Obviously, there was a lot more on where the peristyle, where the steps are, because of the USC students. Probably a chunk of them might have gone there just to see Wiz Khalifa perform, but that's what is a different story. But the racing product, a year ago, we had relatively minimal incidents. If there were pretty big wrecks last year compared to this year, in the sense that they had to stop the race a grand total of 2 times. This year we only had 1, but the series of incidents left and right was catastrophically double, maybe triple than what we had a year ago. And this even goes to the qualifiers and the heats, the last chance qualifiers and the heats, that it was just cautions breed cautions. And then the first half, it looked like, okay, not a whole, there were some cautions then and there. But then after Wiz Khalifa before halftime, that's when everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket. And we had caused 11 out of the 16 yellows in that second half alone, with like 3 of them happening in a single lap because green flag laps only counted. So we saw a lot of comers and goers. We saw guys like Eric Almirola and Bubba Wallace do really well in the first half. Then in the second half, it transitioned to Ryan Preece and Martin Truex Jr. Preece, who had a great run a year ago in the Rick Ware car, really showcased that maybe it's the driver that is making the 41 not look as good, to the point that this is it's kind of like right now, I know it's only 1 week into the season technically. It's hard to tell how Ryan Preece is going to do for the rest of the season. But what we saw so far is that probably Tony Stewart is in the I told you so phase to Gene Haas, because Tony wanted Ryan Preece. Gene Haas wanted to keep Cole Custer in that 41 another year. And already, Ryan Preece in that 41 car has led more laps than Custer did in his entire tenure in the Cup Series already. But with 24 laps to go and several more yellows, Martin Truex Jr., who was probably one of the worst drivers in last year's clash, that got in, if I recall, on the provisional because he made it to championship 4. 180, a complete 180. He was consistent. He was fast in practice. He was fast all weekend to where he showed up and he said it in his own words, he's driving like a madman because if you look back at last year, he didn't make the playoffs. He went winless. And now
Martin's had a tough time both professionally and personally. His relationship ended with Sherry, so I don't know if that factors into him just throwing more of his energy into racing, but certainly he looked like the Martin Truex of old. That Martin Truex of 2017, who was nearly unbeatable. But so good for him. I mean, he's coming off of a bit of a slump season. Even though he looked really good week in, week out, never did hit victory lane, did not make the playoffs. So a good way to start the year again. Non-points race, so it's not going to get him a spot in the playoffs, but it's certainly a good way to start the season.
Absolutely, and I think it does help him go with momentum into Daytona. Like his ex-teammate that he had to battle a couple times, Kyle Busch, they're looking for the maiden Daytona 500 win. Truex, as you'll recall, lost in the nail-biter against Denny Hamlin in 2016. So he's coming in with a lot of momentum, that much-needed momentum. And to kind of show you, and I think it goes back to what Denny Hamlin said in the press conference when I asked him, do we expect guys like Tyler Reddick, Justin Haley, and Kyle Busch to be in the mix? And with a year now, with one season under the belt with the current car, and then just the conditions, it definitely kind of boiled down to qualify. But if you saw Austin Dillon, who finished second in the RCR car, he started 10th in the main event, and he found a way to work. He had to rub fenders with a lot of guys. He had bumped into Bubba Wallace, and that ended his strong run, and to the point that we're still talking about the safety issues of the car already once again. And it's not the only instances where the safety of the car has become a concern. We also saw Ty Gibbs, who had his in-car on fire, and during practice that he didn't even get to qualify. He had to start in the rear of the field. He made it into the main event by finishing second by mere inches over Chase Elliott in the second last chance qualifier. And his night didn't last because he was involved in a multi-car incident that brought out the red flag for fluid that collected Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, and Michael McDowell. So it was a wreck fest, which I hate saying that. But overall, the people, for the most part, from what I've gathered, enjoyed the product that were there in the crowd. Obviously, social media will beg to differ, but overall, there were some exciting moments, but there was some parity. It wasn't like a runaway like we saw where like two drivers kind of ran the ball and dominated like Reddick and Logano a year ago. We saw a series of drivers that were in the mix, and those who got wrecked a number of times bounced back, like Kyle Busch, who was not too pleased with Joey Logano, the defending champion, to where Logano was, we call it a two-face, and like a couple days later, Logano admitted that he can be, but in his words, he said that when he's off the track, he could shut the switch off where he's calm, and then when he's on the track, that's where the two-face element comes into play. We can say that about a lot of drivers. I mean, look, Tony Stewart said that about Robbie Gordon, where off the track he is calm, but when he puts his helmet, it seems like it's a little too tight, and that's when he kind of goes balls to the wall crazy.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of drivers like that over the years. So now, Richard, you've worked in NASCAR for a number of years, and obviously this event is just very different than anything else we do over the whole course of the year. It's shorter. There's no pit lane there. There's no actual pit stops. So we don't really get a good idea of how this fares for anybody this season. But is there any, kind of information that we can glean from looking at this and who did well and who ran well, or is this, just a little one-off experiment, and we really won't know, how we're going to do till we get beyond Daytona into getting on some of the 1.5 mile tracks?
Yeah, I mean the mile and a half. So you're sort of your bread and butter of your NASCAR season in many ways. But the biggest benefit from an event like the Clash will be the guys with the new team. So Kyle Busch, for example, Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs moving up, although he has some experience with the organization, obviously. New people coming in, working with new crew chiefs, new race engineers, new car chiefs, how that dynamic works. And it gives them almost a free pass at it. You get in there and if you don't run great, it's not the end of the world because it's so unique. And it's not like they're running at Phoenix or, a track or Charlotte, a track where they go to a number of times through the year and can get some really good data from it. And also, even going through Daytona, that's a bit of a free pass as well, because really, from an engineering perspective, there's not much you can do on a super speedway car. You just turn it with what you've got, and if it's quick, it's quick. Those races are very, very much driver dependent. There's not much teams can do to improve the performance there. But one topic I did briefly want to touch on was we mentioned the wreck fest of the Clash, but you look at there was plenty of bumping and banging and people turning. If that was Martinsville, everybody would be loving it and saying what a classic Martinsville race it was. Because it's a new place, everybody's saying it's terrible. Well, what do you want? You can't have it both ways. And I've seen some comments, on some of the social media platforms about how it should never be racing there. But yeah, if you have that many number of cautions at Martinsville or a Bristol night race, people will say it's classic NASCAR. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah,
you can't make a huge amount. You can't make a huge amount from these races. It's just that familiarity. It's like your first week back at college. You don't really have any lectures or anything. You just get to remember who your friends are and who your friends aren't. And I think they learned that pretty quickly this last weekend.
I don't know about college, man. Maybe high school, but you got a good point.
Yeah. So Lee, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good, man. Doing good.
Yeah. What I want to ask you about and what your thoughts are the sustainability of this event. All right. So we've got a huge drop off in attendance after 1 year. And when we consider what it costs to put this thing on, we're talking about converting the whole football field into a racetrack and then tearing it down and putting it back. I mean, do you feel like this thing is going to disappear soon, or do you think that they can actually try to, maybe it's just second year slump or whatever, or like Louise alluded to earlier before we're on the air, that the weather was unseasonably chilly for Los Angeles. But I mean, what are your thoughts? You think that thing's going to be around for a while? Because they certainly put a lot of promotion into it.
They put a lot of promotion into it. They put a lot of money into it. I don't see the sustainability of this race. It's a tough sell. LA in itself is really not a sports town. The Dodgers and the football team, if they're doing good, they get seats, they get fans in the seats. But when the teams aren't doing good, there's nobody in the stands. And those are those are teams that play there on a weekly basis, and they have a sustained fan base all year round. NASCAR, I think I've got to tip my hat to them. They've really tried to reach a demographic in a market that normally wouldn't have an event like this. And I just, the money that they spend putting a track together like that, I mean, it's got to be 6-7 figures just to do what they do. Put the track down, prep the surface, and then to try to put fans in the seats. Luis mentioned, a lot of USC fans there. I know last year, I have some friends out in LA and they were like, we got tickets to go see the NASCAR race. I was like, oh, great. How much did that cost you? Nothing. They just gave us tickets. So it's really, I commend NASCAR for what they're doing, but there's really, the return on investment is low. Because LA is just a tough sports market. Like I said, they have major sports franchises there that struggle just to keep 75% capacity on a regular season, every game. And it's tough to have a sport come in there once a year and do that. And then I think NASCAR made an error this year because the Grammys were the same night. here it is, an entertainment town, and 98% of the town is on Hollywood Boulevard watching the stars do their thing. And you know, how do you compete with televised Grammys? It's just it was a tough market. I hope if NASCAR does go forward, I hope they rethink some of their planning of the events, so that they're not faced with national syndicated events like the Grammys. But I commend them for a job well done, but I just don't think the sustainability is there. They're losing money.
Do you
All
feel
right.
like if they get like more relatively recent acts that are still culturally relevant, like Iowa IndyCar with Ed Sheeran, would that kind of help draw more people that want to go there from an entertainment standpoint?
I do. I think Wiz Khalifa was a great. I mean, he's still pop. He's still in pop culture. He's still got songs on the radio. He's still got a big fan base. Cypress Hill, they opened. They've got they're going to have a big fan base no matter what. But I think if they did bring in maybe a big headliner act, it might help them. But in the long run, again, you're talking of one event a year at a city that can barely hold its own, putting fans in seats for their major league teams. It's tough. I want NASCAR to succeed in that marketplace. I don't think it's going to happen.
Understand.
I guess it goes back to the other question. Sorry, quickly. It goes back to the other question, I think, was just because you're filling the seats with external entertainment. So people are going there because there's music or there's celebrity, whatever you want to call it. This is a race. You want people going there for the race.
Yeah.
Where's the benefit of people going there? Yeah, okay, you get 30,000 people there rather than 10 because they want to see, whoever on stage. Okay, well, that's like a fake, false. What good is it doing? You want people going there for the race, and it's a difficult scenario for them to be in. They've got to do more, I think, to sell the race itself.
Yeah, I think that is got a good point. I also, from what I gathered, Ticketmaster listed the tickets at 5 p.m. rather than 2:30 or 2 o'clock for the heats. That's why the heat races in last year's qualifiers was pretty low. But I mean, what do you expect, to be honest with you?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time I went to an event and bought tickets and didn't check the itinerary before I went.
Yeah, but that's you. You're one of the smart. What I'd be interested to see is how the All-Star race later in the season, which is going to be at North Wilkesboro, which is going to be your other non-points paying race. So we're putting that in a classic NASCAR market. Mind you, it's a very small market, but it's a track with a lot of rich NASCAR history. I'd really like to see how that does, because I don't think it'll take much for them to make a profit off of that and sustain that, because you've got a lot of fans built in the area. And, I know they put a lot of money into getting the track ready, but once it's ready, I want to say like year 2, year 3, I think that one's going to be sustainable.
Has it already sold out? I mean, I know the ticket prices are astronomically high.
Yes, they are. They're a little
they're only selling
nutty,
weekend tickets. They're not selling day tickets. So it's in the hundreds of dollars per ticket, because they've put a lot of money into the facility to get it back up to the required standards, and they need that money back. And it's a private investment. It's not a NASCAR investment, I believe. I think Dale Jr. is involved in it.
Yeah, he's got his name attached to it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plans out. And again, you've got sustainability in two ways, haven't you? If people aren't going because they're not interested, that's one thing. But then if people aren't going because you can't afford the ticket prices, and that's another issue. And North Wilkesboro isn't exactly in the most affluent part of North Carolina. It's
no, certainly not.
Sure.
But at the same time, anything, almost anything you want to go to entertainment wise, is sports or music or whatnot, tickets are in the hundreds of dollars. I mean, they really are. I mean, look at what some of these music acts are charging. Look at the tickets for the downtown NASCAR race in Chicago. You know what I mean? If you kind of just look across the board, I remember when I was a kid, everything was either $9.50 or $12.50. Yeah, but that ship has long since sailed. I've got a ticket stub from a Green Bay Packers game I went to in 1995, and the face value was $25. My gosh, you can't walk into an NFL game anymore without dropping a couple of $100. And if you want to have a better seat, you're talking several $100. So I don't. I think your point about the North Wilkesboro not being a very affluent market is quite valid, but I would say the ticket prices themselves are pretty, across the board in line with what people charge for entertainment. Yeah. So, but that's neither here nor there. The Indy 500 still offers one of the best values for ticket price, but even they're going up. I think $15 a ticket next year. But I mean, my Indy tickets are $80, right? And they're pretty darn good seats. I think they're going up to 95 next year, but at a low they were 75. They went up to 80, so I think that's still a decent value. But again, this venue with a lot of seats to sell. So
yeah, that is very, very true. And also, I think Wilkesboro is going to be a one hot ticket just in general. Yeah, obviously for me, my eyes are probably going to be on Indy because that's qualifying weekend. But Wilkesboro is going to be like the one hot ticket for people that would like to go. And I think from a town perspective, it could save them in a few years because they've been in disrepair for a long time because they lost their main source of income from people, the patrons, and so on that come to the town to eat and all that.
I don't know if there's too many people who are over enamored with the thought of the race going back there, but I know it's causing a bit of consternation in the local community from what I've heard. But hopefully,
that's why I'm focusing on the local.
Well, I mean, they left Wilkesboro in the first place because of the lack of infrastructure and the mess that it made.
Yeah.
But
just a coat of paint on the track's not going to change anything on that extent.
No. So I mean, you need to make sure you do it right. Like when they had the first Cup race in Kentucky and they had the horrible traffic problems. Next year they sunk a ton of money into adding lanes to the interstate and adding lanes to the exits and adding parking, and then the next several races were fine, no issues, but the damage was done. The people went the first year and you had people that waited 3 hours to get to the track and then found out there was no place to park, ended up missing the race because they couldn't get in. So the following year the attendance was down, and now we no longer race in Kentucky. So you've got to do it right from the get go. And I again, Wilkesboro had a tough time their last go around in the 90s and early 2000s. So if they don't change more than just a coat of paint on the track, that's that. So anyway, so Louise, anything else coming out of the clash you want to talk about before we move on to another topic?
I have alluded to the safety issues to where Bubba Wallace felt like he was dealing with some pain, and also Ty Gibbs' car kind of went on fire on the interior side of things. That's been like the main concern. Again, it's the safety issues that we talked about throughout last year. And along with that, as far as the LA Clash is concerned, there's still that big rumor with Fontana, regardless, will not be in the 2024 calendar because they still have yet to put a timetable when they're going to convert it to a 2-mile to a short track. That some people thought, oh, maybe the LA Coliseum will become a points-paying race. And there's a couple, like Truex and Jason Small said, keep it as is for the Clash because it's something different and unique because there's no, like you mentioned already, there's no pit stops, there's no strategy involved really. It's just a matter of small adjustments in the brake and not get turned and make most out of opportunities where there's an open lane. But besides that, that's all that kind of went down, to be honest with you, that I just mentioned.
Yeah. Now, is that Fontana announcement? I read that the other day. They're not going to go to Fontana in 24. Now, is that due to the construction where they're going to convert it to a half-mile oval, or is that because that I feel like that's kind of gone on the back burner? There was a lot of talk about that, and suddenly everyone's pretty quiet about that.
It's just there's no time. They're still trying to figure out a timetable on when they're going to convert it. That's not going to happen in 24. It's borderline whether or not we're going to go back to Fontana in 2025 yet. because they got to figure all that stuff out, like the property and also just the time when to tear it down and make it to a short track.
You know, I could almost see Riverside, Fontana just going by the wayside like a Riverside or like an Ontario Motor Speedway, just because, you know, that's LA market. That's valuable real estate, right? That they could make so much more. And that's, you know, that's what happened to Ontario. That's what happened to Riverside. That's what happened to Bridgehampton up in New York. So I really could see them scrapping the whole half-mile plan and just, you know, no longer have a racetrack there. It would not surprise me one bit.
I
Anyway.
mean, Riverside was considered to be, they were trying to make it a super speedway, and that fell through.
Yeah. So
it'll be a shame if we don't go back to Fontana regards again, because it's one good IndyCar venue they can never go back. And even if they make it a short track, it's not going to happen at all because.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, they hosted some great IndyCar races there at Fontana, but unfortunately, the last several years, nobody came to watch them. And, you know, like if a tree falls in the forest, you know, did Will Power still win the thing? You know what I mean? So, but that is neither here nor there. So let's move on. So next we're heading from Los Angeles to Daytona. So the Daytona 500 is coming up, and there's a couple of surprise driver announcements here. Obviously we've talked about Travis Pastrana. He's released his livery. He's going to be going for a spot, but the one that popped up the other day was Connor Daly. Connor Daly out of the IndyCar series. He said he's got a couple of Xfinity starts under his belt. He really hasn't set the world on fire, but he hasn't, you know, embarrassed himself. But he's gonna run the Floyd Mayweather owned car with BitNile as his sponsor, and BitNile again is his IndyCar sponsor. Those guys are all in with Connor Daly and Ed Carpenter. So again, we've got 6 guys going after 4 available spots. One of those guys is Jimmy Johnson, right? And then, of course, you got Pastrana, Elio, and then a couple of other guys. Louise, you could probably fill me in who
I was going to say Elio is off the table for now. It's likely going to be 2024 that we might see Elio. So
Elio, there were some rumors, but it just I think he just wasn't able to put anything together. But
yeah, that got debunked during Rolex 24 weekend.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that Connor Daly is one of, I believe now, 7 Daytona 500 rookies, but one of 5 rookies that must qualify. Only one of those rookies will have to go home. The ones that have to qualify that are rookies are Connor Daly, Zane Smith, Chandler Smith, Austin Hill, and Travis Pastrana. And then the other rookies that are guaranteed in the Daytona 500 are Ty Gibbs and Riley Herbst in the Rick Ware 15 car. And it's important to note that Noah Gragson ran last year's Daytona 500 for Beard Motorsports, but he is one of 2 official Cup rookies that are running for Rookie of the Year honors and for a playoff spot along with Gibbs. So essentially, you've got a plethora of rookies that are standing out in trucks and Xfinity trying to go for the 500, and then you got outsiders trying to make the Great American Race like Jack Villeneuve did last season. And if you were to tell me now who I think is going to be the 2 quickest guys, I think Johnson is doable, but I think the second one is wide open between the Smiths and Connor Daly. I would not be surprised if he actually puts up a good qualifier.
I want to say that Mayweather team they put together, they stuck in last year, did they not?
Yeah, with Casgralla making the 500.
Yeah, they put together a good run. But, you know, my thoughts on Connor Daly have always been kind of contrary to what his fans think, right? I feel that Connor Daly is a respectable driver, but I think he's no more than a midfield talent. And every time I kind of mention that, I get the ire of the IndyCar faithful because people just love Connor Daly because, you know, he's from Indiana and he's a local guy. And he's just, honestly, as a human being, he's just a good dude. He really is. But he really has never kind of set the world on fire. And he's had decent rides. Right, but everybody always wants to make excuses for him. So I'd be interested to see how he runs at Daytona. And then they're talking like 6 other races for him with the Mayweather team. So I don't know what other 6 races they'll put on there, but I want to say that Connor's Xfinity experience is limited to road courses, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was the time where he had that Lilly sponsorship, and that caused a massive storm.
Yeah, that was his dad's comments from several decades ago. So Lee, any thoughts on Connor Daly? You don't know the dude, do you?
I have heard the name. I'm not gonna lie. I've heard the name. Not a IndyCar. I know about it. I know he's a good driver, and I'm anxious to see what he does. I think he's going to be quick. He'd probably be in the top 50%. I hope in qualifying. It would be nice for him. We'll see what he brings around.
Yeah,
all right, man. Good way to answer the question without answering the question.
It boils down to how many.
I don't know. Well,
hey,
look,
when I get into it, I'll start asking some NHRA questions, and we'll see.
I know, right? Yeah.
One, right?
Then you put me in a spot. You're going to get me back one of these days.
Yeah,
but look,
I sure will.
Hey, man, one of these days we're going to have a program all about Argentinian touring car racing. So yeah. So all right. So Richard, who do you like for Daytona? In as far as and it's always a crapshoot, right? But which of the manufacturers do you think has? I want to say last year the Fords were really good, and I'm putting you on the spot, Richard. You don't want to answer this, do you?
You know my opinion on who's going to be quick there this year.
Absolutely, yeah.
But no, it's an interesting event. It always it's always so difficult when you have this flagship event for the series being the first race of the year, and in some ways who wins the 500 is almost bigger than who wins the championship. So it always puts a lot of pressure on the teams, and it's the 2-week event. It's different from any other race weekend that they have. The qualifying is different. The race is different in many, many ways. So it does put a lot of pressure on these teams to come out and fire on all cylinders, literally, for this event. So it's how they work as a team fundamentally. It's how these groups work as a pack. And you have to look at the teams with the most entrants in there. The Ford and Chevy do dominate the field with the number of cars going there, and it's how they work as a pack. But if you can get 3 or 4 guys up there at the front with 5 laps to go, then that puts you in a really, really strong position. And what happens in the previous, 450 miles is just a lottery, basically. It all comes down to those last few laps there, and it's very, very, very difficult to pick, a definitive winner based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got another week before Daytona. We've got pole qualifying coming up this weekend, and then we've got the duels. But then obviously this weekend is Super Bowl Sunday, so that'll be dominating the sports pages, and then Daytona will be the following weekend. So, Louise, who do you kind of like for? I mean, we'll do our picks next week, but what are you looking forward to? With the 500 this year, who do you have your eye on?
I think you can look no further than the Gibbs, the 2311 cars, and of course Penske and RFK. What we saw last year, they were strong in the 500. I don't expect any of it. I don't expect anything different. But I'm going to keep an eye on the RCR duo of Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon. Of course, Dillon won the August race at Daytona. That I don't know how you want to view it, considering everybody else wrecked before he got to the front. He's also happy to be in one of the few that didn't. But Kyle Busch has the mean streak going. He has a sense of urgency, and then Austin Dillon, you never can count him out on the super speedways. It doesn't matter how he goes about it. That's all. But I think it's tough to beat the Ford camp a little bit. But the Toyotas are knocking on that door, and they've been doing so for a while. So I wouldn't count those guys out. I think if I were to pick or too early pick, I'm going to go with Wallace or Reddick as my 500 picks. It could change in a matter of a week from now.
Absolutely. So, Lee, who do you think are some of the, like a dark horse candidate, like somebody that we might not expect to do well? Because, Daytona and the play races in general have a history of producing kind of like surprise winners. So is there anybody you're kind of keeping your eye on to kind of like break the mold of who ought to win?
I think a dark horse, some people would put him at the top, but I he hasn't stepped foot in a NASCAR in a couple of years, and that's Jimmy Johnson. I think he's a fan favorite, but he's stepping back into a NASCAR, a gen car that I don't think he has a lot of seat time in. So I think he's going to be cautious, probably in the duels and qualifying and stuff like that. But come race day, I would not be surprised if we see him battling up front, pretty much all afternoon. And then I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls in the winner circle at the end of this thing. He's got that much talent. I think he's, no matter what you do with him, I think he's going to be a good driver. But like I said, the new cars, he doesn't have a whole lot of experience in. So we'll see. But my dark horse is going to be Jimmy Johnson this year.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy really knows his way around a NASCAR track and knows his. He knows how to get a car set up. Obviously, he's in a new situation. New crew, new this, but still the same old Jimmy. So
yep.
He's got Todd Gordon on top of the box, so that will help him a bit.
Yeah, so you can't go wrong with Todd Gordon. Yeah, that guy knows what he's doing there. So, all right, so let's like jump back a week, right? Or jump back a couple of weeks. Talk about the Rolex 24. No, I'm sorry. Before we do that, let's talk about the IndyCar testing at Thermal. Okay, so that's the first official full field test of the Indy cars. Had it at Thermal Park. I'm sorry, it's not a motor speedway, it's a park, and it is essentially a country club. Or if you're not familiar with Thermal, it is a very exclusive kind of country club. And if you want to it's a country club, except it has a racetrack instead of a golf course. Although it wouldn't be surprised if there's a golf course there too. But very exclusive. I mean, if you want to be a member of Thermal Club, it's just a mere $175,000 to fill out the application, and then it's $2,400 a month. But the kicker is you have to buy a plot of real estate and build a luxury home on there. So you're literally in for roughly $5 to $6 million before you're a member of Thermal Club. But once you're right there on the track, and they've got a track with 5 different layouts, and they had a course set up for the Indy cars there, 2.9 mile, 17 turn circuit. And the Indy cars had 2 successful days of testing, not a lot of issues there, but it looked like the coming out of the box, the Andretti cars were really strong. Connor Daly led the first couple of sessions there, but then the later sessions, we saw a couple of the younger guys like Kyle Kirkwood and Callum Ilott really, really run well. And Marcus Armstrong had a good run. So, Louise, you get to catch any of the footage from Thermal at all, or?
I was I was in full concentration mode on the Clash, but I did saw the results. It looked like Marcus Ericsson was top in one of those sessions. So it looked like the Hondas are still looking sporty.
Hondas look good, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Callum Ilott as well, because he's showing some of that momentum he had at the end of last year so far, and that's going to be key to where it's going to help Juncos. Obviously, you have Agustin Canapino. He did fine. He wasn't at the bottom of the charts at any point, so that shows some promise. And also, Marcus Armstrong comes into the 11 car that's going to be co-chaired by Takuma Sato when Sato runs the ovals. It's like, okay, not bad. He's doing his own thing, which, I mean, you're driving for Ganassi. You got to do good regardless. I know it's been a while since we had that little dark period, like at the post-Vassar Sonardi Montoya phase, where you had a couple good but so-so drivers until Dixon kind of came along.
I mean, Manassian was kind of, but I mean, Bruno Junqueira turned out to be pretty good. Yeah, won a race in his first season. But back to, the current decade, who was at the bottom of the charts was the AJ Foyt cars once again. And with Santino Ferrucci in the full-time seat there, and it looks like really they haven't made any progress. He's not only last, but he's, I mean, literally the field is separated by not very much in IndyCar top to bottom, but, he's still a couple of tenths off a guy ahead of him. So, and Santino's a pretty decent driver. He's a good oval driver, but he's a really good road course driver, and it just shows that they really still struggling in engineering there at Foyt. So again, disappointing. You know, it seemed like Foyt retools every couple of years. New drivers, new sponsors, they get excited to hire some new engineers, and they still no results. So hopefully that's not a a snapshot of how their whole season's going to go, because Ferrucci's got a decent fan base, and a lot of people are looking for him to kind of be the savior of AJ Foyt Racing. But so far, yeah, it's not looking great for them. But
yeah, it's good. We'll see how things go at St. Pete next month, because I mean they bring in people like you mentioned. They brought Michael Cannon out of Ganassi to go to Foyt, so you got to see some progress. It may take time, but we've seen the same song and dance almost every single year, unfortunately. I mean, look at Kyle Kirkwood. He spent the 1 year with Foyt, abysmal to say at in lamest terms, and he goes to Andretti where and already he's kind of showcasing that maybe 2023 is his rookie year 2.0.
yeah, I think I'm Kyle Kirkwood is my early pick to be the next new race winner in IndyCar. I think that the Andretti cars look pretty good based on this first test. And again, we're a month out from the season opener. So we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. But it's good to see all the cars on the track, all the new liveries, all the people in their new places. So, Lee, you get a chance to look at any of it at all? Or
I was busy with the Argentinian touring cars this week, so I didn't get a chance.
I got you.
Check
Yeah,
in on the Indy test at Thermal. So
yeah, that's okay. I mean, it wasn't on broadcast television either. You would have had to tune into the IndyCar app to watch it. So, Richard, any thoughts about IndyCar coming out of Thermal before we move on to the next topic?
No, I think the pecking order was not a huge change from what we've grown to expect. It is, as you mentioned there, it's a disappointment to see Foyt team down there at the bottom. There seems to be a lot of false dawns with them over the years, and at some point you've got to wonder where where the limit is for the people backing that team. You can't keep doing what they're doing, hiring people that they're hiring, because they have spent some money on that side of things. At some point, you've got to get a result.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. So let's backtrack a couple weeks and let's review the Rolex 24, which is the unofficial season opener for all of racing. We got the winners were Tom Blomqvist, Colin Braun, Elio Castroneves, and Simon Pagenaud driving the Acura for Michael Shank Racing. Again, this is the new class, the GTP class that mirrors the Le Mans Hypercar class. This is Elio's third Rolex 24 win. So he's packing up them majors. The man's got 4 Indy 500s. Now he's got 3 Rolex 24s. And here's a guy they say is old and should retire. Well, maybe not, got a little Tom Brady in him there, man, not quite done yet. But Richard, talk to us a little bit about the tremendous technology in this new the hybrid hypercar class, because it's really, I think it was really a slam dunk with both fans and pundits alike. I think everybody really enjoyed what the cars brought to the show.
Oh, they're fantastic cars. They're probably outside of Formula One, the second most technically advanced car in the world. They do some amazing performance with what they have. And the hard thing is your 24 hours is your ultimate test for these things. And they passed it seemingly with flying colours. I think the Porsche Penske had a battery change to make at one point, but that was the only real issue that I saw. And the other issues and the other delays that they had were things any 24-hour race will uncover. So, huge amount of respect and plaudits to the teams that have gone out there and achieved some pretty impressive results with these new cars. An interesting thing to note with the Acura is they've actually maintained the chassis from previous years, whereas the other manufacturers have completed not only a new powertrain but also a new chassis. So there may be a little early advantage there for the Acura in that they have a known platform that they can build upon. and go racing with. So the actual vehicle dynamic side of it, the setup, the engineering of the car is going to be pretty consistent. It's obviously they only have to concentrate on the new engine behavior, whereas some of the other teams have got two things to deal with. But a fantastic racing. It really is a great way to open the season. And I probably watched far too much of it to be considered normal for a 24-hour race. But excellent weekend.
Yeah, great show. So, speaking of which, now your forte is Formula One. So this is the last couple of weeks we've been seeing more and more of the 2023 cars being launched. Some of them are showing their actual cars, others are showing renders. So, what are some of your impressions about some of the 2023 launches?
Well, so far the only team that's actually launched a real car has been Alfa Romeo, and that came out today with their new sponsorship package, which is an evolution. They've obviously lent on some of the successful designs by some of the other teams. There's a lot of Red Bull, a lot of Ferrari inspiration kicking around in there, which is to be expected. The other manufacturers we've seen so far, the Williams, Haas, Red Bull, it's just purely a livery reveal, and there's nothing renderings. There's nothing really much you can pick out of those. It's not going to be for another couple of weeks until we hit the track for pre-season testing in Bahrain, until we actually see what the teams have in store for us. But the Alfa Romeos are an evolution. These teams are still getting to grips with the car and the new regulations from last year, of the ground effect car. And with the cost cap as well, you're probably not going to see these huge swings of design change. You're not going to see something as dramatic as like the walrus nosed car from Williams back in the day, or some of these other things that we've grown to expect. The cars are going to be very, very evolutionary, I think, just purely because of the cost of designing a new car is pretty high. So the teams don't want to incur those expenses, especially as Red Bull are showing, because they're still complaining about their penalty from their cost cap breach a couple of years ago. So it'll be interesting to see what they can bring to the table. But so far it's looking pretty good.
All right. That being said, so let's we're getting close to the end of the hour, but we brought Lee on board to cover the NHRA for us. So Lee, would you give us a kind of a quick preview of the 2023 NHRA with some dates when we start and some things to look for?
Sure. So we start, I believe it's March 9th is when the season starts, first weekend of March. Winter Nationals in Gainesville, Florida. It's much equated to Daytona, and it's like the flagship race of the season. This year, starting off at the at Internationals, the induction class for the Hall of Fame was announced today. Some of the names on the list: John Force, obviously, who's at the top of the list. Carol Bunny Burkert, she's a driver, really influential in the 60s, 70s. Great driver. Shelly Anderson, she's another fantastic driver. Ron Ardby, he's a designer, engine builder, chassis builder. So those names going into the Hall of Fame this year, good way to start it off. We've also got a new engine this year. They're introducing a fuel-injected nitro funny car. It's going to be running with the regular funny car class this year. In the big engines, the nitro classes, the engines are aspirated just because the horsepower is so strong that it's like a restrictor plate. That's why they keep it aspirated. But this year they're going to start introducing some fuel injection into the engines, and they're going to start with the nitro funny car. Mick Steele's going to be driving that. He stepped up. He put his name on the list to kind of be the crash test dummy. Not really the crash test dummy, but he's going to be the lead pilot on this, I guess is what we could call it. So he's a 6-time Northeast guy. Looking forward to what he's going to do. Teams are just like in F1, teams are starting to render out their cars for the year. Tony Stewart Racing, he came out, he and his wife, Leah Pruitt, and their teammate, Matt Hagan, introduced their call it slime body style, slime paint scheme this year. It looks really good. So not a whole lot of changes, but, just some color schemes. And, as the days get closer and the weeks get closer, there's going to be a lot more in the news about them. But that was the stuff that came out this past weekend. The Hall of Fame class and the introduction of mixed steel in the nitro car for fuel injection. So
Now, I do have one real quick question, though. I know they mentioned Pomona's off the calendar. Is that the reason why now they're starting in March rather than the traditional early February?
Yeah, I think that's the case. They're doing some reevaluations of the tracks, just kind of streamlining it, doing where can we get the most bang for our buck? Pomona was a good track. It just didn't get a lot of draw. Sonoma, just up the street in Northern California, seemed to get a little bit more pull for the Western swing. They call it, when they go out to Vegas and Sonoma, and I think they're going up to Seattle this year. So they're just trying to streamline things. They don't have a whole lot. NHRA doesn't have a lot of money to spend. It's not. So I think they're just really trying to streamline where they can get the most bang for their buck. So I'd like to see Pomona back. It was a good racetrack. I went there about 20 years ago when I was in the military, and it was a fun little track. So maybe they'll bring it back. We'll see.
Is the Camping World entitlement sponsorship, is that bringing significantly less money than the Mellow Yellow was, or are they kind of still on about even footing when it comes to entitlement sponsorship?
I don't know the dollar signs. Obviously Coca-Cola and Mellow Yellow pulling out of their sponsorship. I don't think Camping World could fill that quota that was left behind by that corporate sponsorship that they had. The business side of it, it's pretty tight-lipped, but I know that Camping World is seeing some return on investments being the primary sponsor. Again, a couple weeks ago, we talked about how they go hand in hand. Most race fans and camping are, it's apples and apples. So, but money-wise on that business side, I'd like to see how the season goes, and maybe Camping World will get a little bit bigger piece of the pie from the NHRA this year. So,
all right, well, good, man. Thank you so much. So we've got a couple minutes left, and there's just one other odd little news story that we forgot to mention, which is Kyle Busch found himself in a little bit of legal hot water down in Mexico, returning from vacation. When they checked his baggage, it turned out he had a handgun and some hollow point bullets in his bag. And he says, "Oh my, I forgot I had a gun. I didn't mean to bring a gun to Mexico." But evidently he's been sentenced to jail in Mexico. Now, whether or not he actually will serve that time remains to be seen. I don't believe that he will, but that was just, as if the man doesn't need any more distractions in his life. I think changing teams and everything else. He's got his name's all over the news for sneaking guns into Mexico. So, I mean, Louise, what are your thoughts on this, man? I think
it boils down to either you face time 3.5 years, or you just pay a hefty fine, which I believe, in addition to a hefty fine, would not be surprised if he can't travel down there for X amount of years. I mean, each scenario is circumstantial. I mean, Robbie Gordon in Australia, because he was doing some stuff that was deemed as reckless driving. I mean, Snoop Dogg and Jeff Hardy were barred to travel to certain countries for XYZ reasons that we could talk about some other time. But it's like Kyle Busch, I think there's this joke going around that's like, he leaves Joe Gibbs Racing, now he's trying to be a gangster for whatever reason. But there's also somebody brought this up, and I think it's pretty valid. He and Braxton were at the Minnesota Mall of America when that shooting happened last year. It makes me wonder if he has that with the weaponries with him for his own protection.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, but how do you forget you had a handgun?
That's the question. You I forgot my
With
wallet.
great power
Is one
comes
thing.
great
Is one thing.
responsibility, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Ti is jealous of Kyle Busch because I think didn't he go to I think he went to jail because of stuff like that, because I think he had no papers like Kyle Busch did. It's like, well, then if I did, I would have not been in jail for a year in the late 2000s. Who knows?
Yeah, well, again, like I say, if Kyle Busch is trying to start the next chapter in his life, and this is, not the best way to kick it off, getting knocked around by Joey Logano and then getting detained in Mexico. So, any parting thoughts, guys? We got about 3 minutes left.
I wanted to mention one real quick NASCAR news, and I mentioned this very briefly. Like Zane Smith is going to be driving not just the Daytona 500 in the 36 car. He's also going to be driving a couple races in Todd Gilliland's 38 car, which continues the narrative that from 2019 onwards, there's been a different driver every single year in the 38 car. Yes, Todd Gilliland is still going to run the rest of the schedule that, what is it like? He's going to run 30 or still races, but again, somebody else is going to be driving a few races in that 38 cars. There's still no continuity in that 38 car from 19 onwards. You had Reagan, you had John Hunter Nemechek, you had Anthony Alfredo, and then Todd Gilliland full-time this past year, and now he's going to be, in theory, a part-time driver. So it's a shame for Todd because he's a good kid. It's just he's not going to be able to show it properly unless, I'm sure he'll find a ride, but there's just still Sonoma's the big question mark, because what team will give him a ride on the road course? Because there's Joey Hand out there that some teams will probably be clamoring. There's one specific team that probably will.
All right, that specific team is
the 15 car of Rick Ware Racing.
There you go. There it is, Joey Hand. All right. And, Joey Hand always brings his A game when he shows up on a road course. So with that being said, speaking of bringing your A game, I want to thank you, Lee, Louise, and Richard, for bringing your A game tonight. I want to thank my producer, Keith Hayes, for getting us live, getting us on video. I really had fun tonight. I want to thank the Whoobazoo Radio Network, Sinister One Productions. I want to thank Netflix, Google, YouTube, Spreaker, Apple Podcast. But most off, I want to thank you folks that tuned in to watch us tonight. We'll be back on in a week. Until then, well, good night.
Thanks for watching Drafting the Circuits. Make sure to follow Drafting the Circuits on Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube. Drafting the Circuits is a Sinister One production. Thanks for watching Drafting the Circuits. Make sure to follow Drafting the Circuits on Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube. Drafting the Circuits is a Sinister One production.